Hello, everyone. I'm Gwen Preston of Resource Maven, and I'm here at the Metals Investor Forum in Toronto, and I'm joined by Bill Sheriff of enCore Energy. Thanks for finding the time when in what are some very busy days for enCore.
They are a very hectic time schedule, which is a good thing. Thank you very much for hosting us again.
So last time I spoke to you, which was in January in Vancouver, since then you have gone and had a grand opening of the Rosita plant, which was, I'm sure, an exciting event. And you've also closed your transaction with Boss Energy, which transformed your financial setup and accelerated your timeline to production. So do you want to just run through some of those achievements? I mean, it's a lot that's happened in 7 weeks.
It's dramatic. And, if you go back even to, say, September of last year, we were $60 million in debt with no revenue. And $4 or $5 million in the bank, and we were having to do things very linearly, one step at a time. And our production plans, if you will, over the next 3 years, represented that.
Yes.
And with the how things have changed, now we've got $75 million in the bank, no debt. Revenue from Rosita, and within the next 6 to 8 weeks, revenue coming in from Alta Mesa, our second plant, which is much larger than the first. And that one will be running for decades based on its resource. So the key element of making all this happen, of course, was the initial purchase of Alta Mesa back only a little over a year ago.
Which was a very astute purchase.
It was, even though we were roundly criticized at the time for paying ridiculous money for it. But
then only 8 months later, you sold 30% of it, representing like almost a double.
Yeah, it was
an
80-some% increase in the NPV.
Yeah.
And that worked out well. Boss is a good fit for us. Their attitude and the way they do business fits with us, and
Fantastic.
we can, which is important if you're going to be in a joint venture. It's essentially
Absolutely.
a long-term marriage.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
with fewer outs, perhaps, but. They're the folks we like dealing with, and they've enabled us with that $70 million influx of cash to take our entire portfolio of production projects and advance them. And even though it wasn't an M&A transaction, it was still, a very substantial transaction, and we viewed it as such. And we've got a long-standing commentary that we won't. We're big fans of M&A. We built the company and previous companies on it, but we won't do it unless it advances us in terms of total pounds that we're going to be able to deliver, or the timeline to deliver those pounds.
Yes.
And this one just checked all the boxes on the ladder, and it not only, even though we're only having 30% or 70% of Alta Mesa with 30% sold, it still will increase our Alta Mesa production timelines because of that extra capital.
Yeah.
And once you've got a plant built, in order to get up to full production, the only thing you need, and I say this only as if it's easy, it's very difficult, is an enormous number of drill rigs and a lot of pipes and plumbing.
Yeah.
And with that money, we get the drill rigs and can move forward much quicker. So.
Fantastic. It's a lot that's happened. One thing that leads me to, you now have, over the next few years, you plan to get to 5 million pounds of annual production as enCore, which is a really impressive number, especially in the context of, America as a whole only a year ago or 2 years ago produced like 200,000 pounds. So it's a substantial number for sure. But America consumes, 48 million pounds of uranium a year. Some half of that comes from Russia. Now that's likely not going to be available going forward. And so, another chunk of it comes from friendly places, Canada, Australia. But there's still a significant need for domestic uranium production. And your team, which is among, if not the most sort of experienced U.S. uranium developers and producers, can only, and I don't mean to say that in a bad way, bring it up to 5 million pounds over the next few years. And that just really speaks to the challenges of trying to get America into uranium production.
It really does. And, keep in mind, we're based in two of the most progressive permitting jurisdictions in the U.S. and arguably even in the world at the timelines. It took us 20 months to get Rosita in from permit application for a restart into production in 20 months.
Right.
And that's an unheard of number in the Western world.
Yeah.
And, Wyoming's not far behind that. And that's where we've got, our efforts based to get to that 5 million pound a year goal within 5 years. Now, we won't produce 5 million in 5 years. We'll be at that run rate at the end of 5 years. So that in 6 years, we'll produce 5. I'd also, caution that, if every plant that we're licensed right now on the ISR side were to go into production, we're still at 22 million.
Right.
So, it would take every plant there, and many of them have been sitting idle for a long time.
Yeah.
You don't just go in and flip the light switch on and start, that's for sure. We started renovations on Rosita back in 2021. But it's just not that easy, and there's not that many people, as you point out. We do have probably the deepest bench strength of anybody in the U.S. and maybe anybody in the world for in situ production. So it's as you say, 5 million pounds doesn't seem that much, but then again, I'd say we haven't exactly been the same company at any 3-month snapshot picture either.
So I should check in again in another
You
7
should
weeks.
check in again. We're always looking for M&A opportunities, and here again, they have to be either accretive to us in terms of total pounds that we can produce in a reasonable time frame, or they have to be immediately accretive in terms of our production timeline.
Yeah.
And just like the Boss deal where we sold 30%, that accelerated all of our production and checked the boxes very nicely on that. So stay tuned.
For sure. Well, certainly a dynamic company to. I certainly own enCore for the role that it is actively playing, like you say, in this uranium market, which is a market that just doesn't have enough supply as a globe, but specifically in this east-west divide version of the market that's clearly developing.
Much more concentrated there.
Exactly. The West is in a worse position. So that's why I own enCore, and I'm very happy to see the great strides that you're taking. And thanks for being here. I look forward to keeping up with the story.
Thank you. Should be interesting times to come. I think supply will be chasing demand for a good decade before there's even a chance of normalization. So
I agree.
all right. Thanks so much, Gwen.